My name is Ashley, and at 34, I never imagined being a widow raising my 6-year-old daughter, Emma, alone. When my sister Amanda invited us to her lavish wedding, I hoped for a day of family celebration. Little did I know her special day would become my public humiliation. What my sister and mother did shocked everyone, but what the groom did next changed everything. If you are watching this video, please let me know where you are watching from and hit subscribe. This is the story of how I discovered who truly supported me on the worst day of my life. 3 years ago, my life shattered when my husband James died in a car accident. One moment we were planning our future in our cozy suburban home, and the next I was planning his funeral. Emma was only 3 then, too young to fully understand that Daddy would never come home again. Her innocent questions about when Daddy would return broke my heart daily. I had to learn how to answer those questions while managing my own grief. The financial strain hit immediately. James had been the primary breadwinner with his construction management job, while I worked part-time as an administrative assistant. Suddenly, I had to become the sole provider. Our savings quickly dwindled between funeral costs and daily expenses. 6 months after James died, I had to sell our home and move into a small 2-bedroom apartment in a less desirable neighborhood. I took on a second job waitressing on weekends and evenings when my neighbor could watch Emma. My days became an exhausting blur of work, childcare, and collapsing into bed, only to repeat it all again the next day. The physical exhaustion was nothing compared to the emotional toll. I missed James every single day, but I had to stay strong for Emma. Emma became my sole purpose, my reason to get up each morning. Her smile, so much like her father's, gave me the strength to keep going. I made sure she never went without necessities, even if it meant I skipped meals or wore the same clothes for years. Every spare dollar went to her education fund or towards small treats to give her childhood some normalcy. Throughout all this hardship, my relationship with my family deteriorated rather than strengthened. My sister Amanda, 2 years older than me, had always been my parents' favorite. While I struggled with our modest upbringing and average grades, Amanda excelled academically and professionally. Now at 36, she was a successful marketing executive at a prestigious firm with a corner office and salary that allowed her a luxury lifestyle I could barely comprehend anymore. Amanda had been dating Daniel for 3 years. He came from old money and worked as an investment banker. Their relationship was everything my parents, especially my mother Barbara, had dreamed of for their daughters. They lived in a penthouse apartment, took exotic vacations twice yearly, and moved in social circles filled with influential people. My mother never missed an opportunity to compare us. When I called asking for help with childcare so I could pick up extra shifts, she would sigh dramatically and say, "Amanda never needs to ask for help. She planned her life properly." The implied message was clear. My struggles were my own fault, not worthy of sympathy or assistance. The wedding invitation arrived 6 months ago. It wasn't personally delivered or even accompanied by a warm call. It arrived by courier, a thick cream envelope with gold embossing, addressed only to me, not Emma. I stared at it for a long time before opening it, already knowing what I would find. The phone rang that evening. Amanda's voice was polite but distant. "Did you get the invitation?" "Yes, thank you," I replied, matching her formal tone. "It's adults only, so you'll need to find a sitter for Emma," she said without preamble. "The venue is very exclusive and children aren't permitted." I clutched the phone tighter. "Amanda, you know I can't afford a sitter for an entire day and evening. All my regular babysitters will be at your wedding." "That's not really my problem, is it?" Her voice hardened. "This is my day, Ashley. Figure it out." That conversation sparked a month-long battle. I called my mother, hoping for support, but instead received a lecture about responsibility and respect. "Your sister has planned her perfect day for years," Mother said icily. "She shouldn't have to compromise because of your situation. Find a solution or don't come, but don't ruin this for her." The argument escalated when I pointed out that as her niece, Emma should be included in family celebrations. Mother's response cut deep. Well, she's hardly family in the traditional sense, is she? No father, living in that apartment. Amanda wants class and elegance, not reminders of family tragedy. I nearly decided not to attend, but something in me couldn't bear the thought of giving them another reason to look down on me. After weeks of back and forth, Amanda finally relented, allowing Emma to attend, but with clear warnings. She must be perfectly behaved. We would be seated far from the main party, and Emma would not be in any official photographs. And for God's sake, Amanda added, dress appropriately. Not those discount store clothes you usually wear. My mother called the next day. Amanda has been generous allowing Emma to attend. Don't make her regret it. Don't embarrass us, Ashley. For once, try not to draw attention to your situation. I hung up wondering how being a widow was something I was drawing attention to rather than an unwanted tragedy. But I swallowed my pride and promised myself we would attend with dignity, if only to show them that Emma and I deserved respect. With the wedding 2 weeks away, I faced the daunting task of finding appropriate attire. My wardrobe consisted mainly of work clothes and casual wear, nothing suitable for what the invitation described as a black tie celebration of love at the Grand Plaza Hotel. Emma needed something special too, as Amanda had grudgingly allowed her to attend. I checked my savings account with a heavy heart. The $200 I had managed to set aside was meant for Emma's upcoming school supplies, but there was no alternative. We headed to the mall on my day off, determined to find something acceptable without completely emptying my account. Emma skipped alongside me, genuinely excited. Will there be a princess cake, Mommy? Will Aunt Amanda wear a crown? Her innocence made me smile despite my anxiety. The cake will be beautiful, sweetie, and Aunt Amanda will look like a queen in her wedding dress. We found a sale at a department store that was slightly above my usual budget, but below the high-end boutiques where Amanda would shop. After an hour of searching, I found a simple navy blue dress that looked elegant enough for the occasion without being showy. It was on clearance for $70, which made my heart sink a little less. Emma's face lit up when she found a pale pink dress with a satin ribbon. When she tried it on, twirling in front of the mirror, I couldn't say no despite the $90 price tag. Her joy was worth every penny of my dwindling savings. We look beautiful, Mommy, she declared as we made our purchases. Like princesses. I smiled but couldn't shake the knowledge that no matter what we wore, my mother and sister would find fault. Their standards weren't really about clothing, but about the life circumstances I couldn't change. The night before the wedding, Amanda had arranged a family dinner at an upscale restaurant downtown. It would be the first time I would meet Daniel in person, though I had seen countless photos on Amanda's social media. I dressed carefully in my best work outfit, helped Emma into a casual dress, and caught a bus to the restaurant, unable to afford the parking fees. We arrived exactly on time to find my parents and Amanda already seated with Daniel. My father William nodded a greeting while my mother barely looked up from her menu. Amanda was draped over Daniel, laughing at something he had said. Finally, my mother muttered as we approached. Everyone, this is Ashley and her daughter Emily. Emma, I corrected quietly, helping my daughter into the chair farthest from the center of the table. Daniel stood and extended his hand, first to me and then, surprisingly, knelt to Emma's level. It's very nice to meet you both. Amanda has told me a lot about her little sister. Something in his warm brown eyes seemed genuinely kind, unlike the cool politeness I had expected. He was tall with dark hair touched by silver at the temples, dressed impeccably in what I assumed was a designer suit. Emma, would you like some crayons? I asked the hostess to have some ready just in case. He produced a small pack of crayons and a children's menu that could be colored. Emma's face lit up. Thank you, Mr. Daniel. Just Daniel is fine, he smiled, returning to his seat beside Amanda, who was watching this exchange with a slight frown. Throughout dinner, I noticed how Daniel made efforts to include me in conversation, asking about my job and listening attentively to my answers. Each time I began to speak, however, my mother would interrupt or Amanda would change the subject. Ashley works in an office, my mother said dismissively when Daniel asked about my career. Nothing exciting. Amanda, tell Daniel about that new campaign your team is launching. Emma remained surprisingly well-behaved, coloring quietly and eating her chicken fingers without complaint. At one point, Daniel asked her about school, and she excitedly told him about her first-grade teacher and best friend Lily. Emma, adults are talking, Amanda cut in sharply. Finish your dinner. I saw Daniel's eyebrows rise slightly, but he said nothing, instead offering Emma a kind smile before turning back to the adult conversation. As dinner concluded, Amanda detailed the wedding schedule, barely looking in my direction. Ceremony at 2, reception immediately following. Ashley, you and Emma should arrive by 1:30, not earlier. The family will be taking photos before the ceremony, but you won't be needed for those. Won't be needed? I repeated, stung by the implication. Well, you know what I mean, Amanda waved her hand dismissively. The core family photos. Mom, Dad, me, Daniel, his parents. The important ones for the album. I noticed Daniel's slight frown, but he remained silent as Amanda continued outlining the day's events. By the time we left the restaurant, I felt exhausted from the effort of maintaining a pleasant facade. That night, as I tucked Emma into bed in our small apartment, she asked innocently, "Why doesn't Aunt Amanda like us, Mommy?" The question pierced my heart. It's complicated, sweetie. Sometimes grown-ups have difficulty understanding each other. But tomorrow we'll go to the wedding, be on our very best behavior, and show everyone what wonderful people we are. Okay. Emma nodded solemnly. I'll be the best girl there. You already are, I whispered, kissing her forehead. After she fell asleep, I laid out our outfits for the next day, carefully steaming the wrinkles from our dresses. I told myself everything would be fine, that we would attend, smile appropriately, and leave without incident. How terribly wrong I was. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear, a perfect June day. I woke early, my stomach already knotted with anxiety. Emma bounced out of bed with excitement, chattering about the princess party we would attend. Her enthusiasm helped ease my nerves as we prepared for the day. I took extra care with our appearances, curling Emma's blonde hair into perfect ringlets and securing them with small pearl clips I had bought as a special treat. My own hair I swept into an elegant updo, watching tutorials online until I achieved something that looked professionally done. The hours of practice had been worth it. For once, I felt almost confident about how we looked. We arrived at the Grand Plaza Hotel by taxi, unable to afford the valet parking. The five-star hotel rose like a gleaming palace in the city center, its marble columns and crystal chandeliers visible through massive windows. A doorman in a crisp uniform opened our taxi door, giving us a practiced smile that faltered slightly when he saw we had no luggage, clearly not hotel guests. The Sterling McAllister wedding? I asked quietly. Ballroom level, madam. Elevators to your right. Emma gripped my hand tightly as we entered the opulent lobby, her eyes wide at the splendor. It looks like a castle, Mommy, she whispered, and I nodded, equally overwhelmed by the luxury my sister had chosen for her special day. The ballroom level was a flurry of activity. Wedding staff directed guests toward a pre-ceremony cocktail area, where my mother had instructed us to wait. The space was already filling with elegantly dressed people, most wearing designer outfits that made my carefully chosen department store dress feel suddenly inadequate. Ashley, there you are. My mother materialized before us, resplendent in a silver gown that probably cost more than 3 months of my rent. Her hair and makeup were flawless, her jewelry glinting under the chandeliers. She gave me a quick air kiss near my cheek, careful not to make contact. You look nice. Simple, but appropriate. I forced a smile, Thank you, Mother. You look beautiful. She barely glanced at Emma. The ceremony will begin soon. Try to mingle, will you? Rather than standing in the corner like you usually do. Before I could respond, she swept away to greet other guests, leaving Emma and me standing awkwardly near the entrance. I took a deep breath and led Emma toward the bar, ordering a soda for her and water for myself, unable to afford the overpriced cocktails. Ashley Bailey, is that you? A voice called from behind me. I turned to see Patricia Collins, a former high school classmate who had been in Amanda's circle of friends. My goodness, it's been years. Patricia, hello, I managed, bracing myself for the inevitable questions. I was so sorry to hear about James, she said, lowering her voice. Just terrible. And you with the little one. She glanced at Emma with exaggerated sympathy. How are you managing? The question felt invasive rather than caring. We're doing well, thank you. Emma is thriving in school, and I'm working at Westfield Insurance now. Oh, that's nice. Patricia's tone suggested it was anything but. In what capacity? Administrative support, I answered, hating how small it sounded compared to her obvious success, evidenced by her designer dress and diamond earrings. Well, that must be rewarding, she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I'm heading the marketing department at Richardson Global now. Just bought a vacation home in Aspen. The conversation continued in this vein, Patricia subtly highlighting the differences in our lives while maintaining a veneer of friendly concern. It was a pattern that repeated with each interaction as more guests arrived. Former friends and distant relatives approached with performative sympathy before steering conversations toward their own achievements or asking probing questions about my financial situation. Emma stood patiently by my side, occasionally fidgeting with her dress. I noticed other children her age being entertained by a hired nanny in a corner of the room, but when I suggested she join them, a mother I didn't recognize gave me a cool look and shifted slightly to block Emma's approach to the group. At 1:15, a wedding coordinator approached us. Family photos will begin in the garden terrace in 5 minutes. Oh, we were told we wouldn't be needed for those, I explained, remembering Amanda's instructions. The coordinator checked her clipboard with a frown. That can't be right. You're the bride's sister, correct? All immediate family is required. A flutter of hope rose in my chest. Perhaps Amanda had reconsidered including us. I followed the coordinator to the garden terrace, a stunning space with panoramic city views and elaborate floral arrangements in Amanda's chosen colors of cream and gold. My parents were already positioned near an arbor dripping with orchids, my father looking uncomfortable in his tuxedo while my mother adjusted his boutonniere. Amanda stood slightly apart, a vision in her designer gown, speaking intently with the photographer. When she spotted us, her smile tightened. Ashley, what are you doing here? I thought I explained about the photos. The coordinator looked between us, confusion evident. I assumed immediate family. Yes, well, Amanda cut her off smoothly. We have a specific shot list. We're doing parents first, then adding extended family later. She turned to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. We'll call you when needed. The photographer cleared his throat. Actually, for the family groupings, it's standard to include siblings. Should we add your sister now? Amanda's jaw tightened, but before she could respond, our mother interjected. We're on a very tight schedule. Let's stick with just the core family for now. Ashley understands. Emma tugged at my hand. Aren't we family, Mommy? The innocent question hung in the air, loud enough for everyone to hear. An uncomfortable silence followed before the photographer awkwardly suggested, perhaps we could do one quick shot with everyone? That won't be necessary, my mother said firmly. Ashley, why don't you take Emily to find your seats for the ceremony? We'll be starting soon. Emma, I corrected automatically, my voice barely audible as I fought back tears. We retreated from the terrace, Emma's small hand in mine. As we walked away, I heard the photographer directing my parents and Amanda into position, their laughter floating on the air as if our dismissal had never happened. The ceremony itself was as lavish as expected. Hundreds of guests filled the ballroom, which had been transformed into a fantasy of white and gold. A string quartet played as ushers in tuxedos escorted guests to their seats. Emma and I were shown to the back row on the bride's side, despite there being empty seats near the front. As the music swelled and Amanda appeared on our father's arm, I couldn't help but remember my own wedding day. James and I had married in my parents' backyard with only 50 guests, most of the arrangements done by friends to save money. Amanda had complained about her bridesmaid dress being off the rack and left immediately after the ceremony, missing our reception. Emma watched wide-eyed as Amanda glided down the aisle, a vision in white satin and lace. "She looks like a real princess," she whispered, and I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. When Amanda and Daniel exchanged vows, I noticed how he looked at her with genuine affection, his voice steady and sure as he promised to love and cherish her. For a moment, I felt a pang of something like hope that perhaps my sister had found someone truly good. As the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Emma suddenly asked, "Did Daddy look at you like that when you got married?" The question was loud enough that several guests turned to look at us, some with annoyance, others with that familiar, pitying expression I had come to loathe. "Yes, sweetheart," I whispered. "Exactly like that." The reception was held in the hotel's grand ballroom, transformed into an ethereal wonderland with floating candles, crystal centerpieces, and cascading floral arrangements. A 16-piece orchestra played softly as guests found their assigned tables. Emma gripped my hand tightly as we searched for our names among the elegant place cards. "Table 23, a server informed me after watching us wander for several minutes. He pointed to the farthest corner of the room, near the service entrance and restrooms. I thanked him with as much dignity as I could muster and led Emma to our assigned seats. Table 23 was clearly designated for distant relatives and obligatory invites. Besides us, it seated my father's second cousin whom he hadn't spoken to in 15 years, an elderly great-aunt who was hard of hearing, and 3 of my mother's colleagues who looked equally displeased with their placement. "Why aren't we sitting with Grandma and Grandpa?" Emma asked, her voice carrying across the table. "This is where we were assigned, sweetie," I explained quietly. "Different people sit at different tables." "But we're family," she insisted, her lower lip trembling slightly. "I wanted to sit with Aunt Amanda. She looks so pretty." One of my mother's colleagues, a woman whose name I couldn't recall, gave a small sniff. "Family dynamics can be so complicated, can't they?" she murmured to her companion, just loud enough for me to hear. I helped Emma into her chair and tried to engage her with the elaborate menu card, pointing out the choices she might enjoy from the children's meal option. The other guests at our table made minimal effort at conversation, speaking amongst themselves and occasionally glancing our way with barely concealed curiosity. Dinner was served with impeccable timing, each course more elaborate than the last. Emma struggled with her silverware but did remarkably well for a 6-year-old, earning grudging approval from our tablemates. I relaxed slightly as the meal progressed without incident, hoping we might make it through the evening unscathed. That hope was shattered when the time came for speeches. The best man delivered a charming tribute to Daniel, followed by maid of honor Rachel's emotional recollections of her friendship with Amanda. Then my mother rose, champagne flute in hand, and approached the microphone at the center of the room. "Today is the culmination of everything I've ever dreamed for my daughter," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the expertly designed sound system. "Amanda has always been exceptional. Valedictorian, Ivy League graduate, executive by 30. Her father and I have watched with pride as she's built a life of accomplishment and purpose." My mother paused, taking a sip of champagne before continuing. "As parents, we try to guide our children toward good choices, but ultimately, they make their own decisions. Amanda has always chosen wisely, surrounding herself with the right people, pursuing the right opportunities. Her gaze drifted meaningfully toward our table. She's been an example of how life should be approached, a counterpoint to other paths. A ripple of uncomfortable laughter moved through the crowd as several guests glanced in my direction. Emma looked up at me, confused by the sudden attention. I placed my hand over hers and gave a reassuring squeeze I didn't feel. In Daniel, my mother continued, Amanda has chosen a partner worthy of her brilliance. A man of substance and character who complements her in every way. Together, they represent everything right about modern marriage. A true power couple with unlimited potential. The speech continued for several more minutes, each superlative about Amanda and Daniel feeling like a subtle indictment of my own failed dreams. When she finally concluded to enthusiastic applause, I released a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. The worst, I thought, was over. How naive I was. After dinner, as guests mingled and the orchestra played softly, Amanda took the microphone for what I assumed would be standard bride and groom thanks. She looked radiant, the champagne and excitement bringing a flush to her cheeks as she surveyed her guests. Daniel and I want to thank everyone for sharing our special day, she began warmly. Each of you represents a cherished part of our lives and success story. She began acknowledging various groups, thanking work colleagues, college friends, and family members for their support. When she reached family acknowledgments, she waved toward my parents. To Mom and Dad, who showed me what excellence looks like and never accepted mediocrity. Enthusiastic applause followed as my parents stood, accepting the recognition with practiced smiles. Then Amanda's gaze found me, and something in her expression shifted. Whether it was the champagne or the power of having everyone's attention, I'll never know, but what came next destroyed any pretense of family unity. And I should acknowledge my little sister Ashley, she said, her voice taking on an edge I recognized from childhood arguments. Come on up here, Ashley. Confused and apprehensive, I remained seated until several guests turned expectantly toward me. With extreme reluctance, I stood, leaving Emma at the table with a whispered instruction to stay put. As I approached the center of the room, Amanda put her arm around my shoulders in a gesture that appeared affectionate to observers, but felt constraining. This is my widowed sister, everyone. A single mom doing her best on a tight budget. A hush fell over the room. I froze, unable to process that she had actually said those words aloud. Ashley couldn't contribute much to the wedding, of course, Amanda continued, her smile never wavering. But she's here representing the Bailey family's, shall we say, humbler side. Scattered nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. I tried to step away, but Amanda's grip tightened. It's not easy being the successful sibling, she added, her voice carrying the false modesty she had perfected over years. Especially when your sister will probably never find another man to take care of her and her daughter. At this point, I became aware of Emma standing nearby, having left her seat to follow me. Her small face showed confusion turning to distress as she processed her aunt's words. Before I could reach for her, my mother appeared beside us, champagne glass in hand, apparently finding the situation amusing rather than appalling. Anyone interested in taking her home? She asked with a laugh that several guests nervously echoed. Bachelor special. 2-for-1 deal. The awkward laughter grew, spreading through the room as guests either joined in or watched in horrified fascination. I stood immobilized by shock, unable to formulate a response or even move away. Emma pressed against my side, beginning to cry quietly as she sensed the cruelty directed at us. I have never felt more exposed or humiliated. In that moment, surrounded by hundreds of strangers laughing at my grief and struggles, I wished the floor would open and swallow us whole. The room seemed to spin slightly, my vision tunneling as I fought against tears and nausea. Just as I finally gathered the strength to grab Emma and flee, movement from the head table caught everyone's attention. Daniel had risen to his feet, his expression thunderous. The room fell silent as Daniel stood, his tall frame commanding attention without a word. The orchestra's music trailed off uncertainly, leaving a tense quiet broken only by the sound of Emma's sniffles beside me. Amanda's smile faltered as she watched her new husband step away from the head table, his movements deliberate and controlled. "Daniel," she questioned, her voice suddenly small in the expansive room. He didn't respond to her. Instead, he reached for a microphone from a nearby stand, his expression unreadable as he surveyed the crowd. The guests shifted uncomfortably under his gaze, the earlier laughter evaporating into awkward silence. My mother remained frozen, champagne glass still in hand, her expression slowly morphing from amusement to confusion. "I want to thank everyone for being here today," Daniel began, his deep voice steady despite the obvious tension. "Weddings are meant to celebrate love and family. They're about bringing people together, not tearing them apart." He paused, his eyes finding mine across the room. There was something in his gaze I couldn't identify, a mixture of apology and resolve. "What many of you don't know is that I grew up in a single-parent household myself," he continued, causing murmurs of surprise among the guests. Amanda's head snapped toward him, clearly as shocked as everyone else by this revelation. "My father died when I was 4 years old, leaving my mother to raise me alone." Daniel's voice grew more passionate as he continued. "My mother worked 3 jobs to ensure I had every opportunity. She sacrificed her own comfort, her social life, even her health, to give me a future. She wore the same clothes for years so I could have new school supplies. She skipped meals so I could have enough to eat when money was tight." The room was completely silent now, every guest riveted by his unexpected speech. I noticed several women discreetly wiping away tears. For 18 years, I watched my mother endure pitying looks, dismissive comments, and outright cruelty from people who judged her circumstances without understanding her strength. I watched as family members who should have supported her instead treated her as an embarrassment, a cautionary tale, a burden. His gaze shifted pointedly to my mother, whose face had drained of color. "I promised myself that I would never become the kind of person who measured someone's worth by their marital status or bank account. I promised I would always honor the incredible strength it takes to parent alone, to face each day with courage when it would be easier to give up." Daniel stepped down from the platform and began walking directly toward Emma and me. With each step he took, I could see Amanda's expression shifting from confusion to anger. "Last year, I lost my mother to cancer," Daniel continued, his voice catching slightly. "Her greatest regret was not living to see me married, not meeting the person I would spend my life with." He was standing before us now, looking down at Emma with a gentle smile. "She would have loved to be here today." To my astonishment, Daniel knelt down to Emma's level, just as he had at the rehearsal dinner. "Hello, Emma. Would you like to dance with me? I think there's ice cream coming soon, too." Emma looked up at me questioningly, tear tracks still visible on her cheeks. I nodded slightly, too overwhelmed to speak. Daniel offered his hand to Emma, who hesitantly placed her small fingers in his palm. Then he stood and looked directly at my mother, who had followed him across the room and now stood nearby, her expression a mixture of outrage and embarrassment. "You asked if anyone would take them home," Daniel said, his voice carrying in the silent room. "I will. I'll take them to be part of our family, a family where everyone is valued regardless of their circumstances." He turned toward me, his expression softening. "Ashley, I'm sorry this happened. No one deserves to be treated this way, especially not by family." The silence stretched for several heartbeats before someone, I think it was Daniel's father, began to applaud. The sound spread tentatively at first, then with growing enthusiasm until most of the room had joined in. A few guests remained stone-faced, clearly allies of my mother and sister, but they were the minority. Amanda stood frozen near the head table, her picture-perfect wedding moment shattered. My mother's face had flushed bright red, her knuckles white around her champagne glass. Neither moved as Daniel led Emma and me to the dance floor, signaling the orchestra to resume playing. As we reached the center of the room, Daniel lifted Emma into his arms so she could dance properly, swaying gently to the music while maintaining a respectful distance from me. I meant what I said. He spoke quietly, for our ears only. No one should ever be made to feel ashamed of being a single parent. My mother was the strongest person I've ever known, and I suspect you're cut from the same cloth. Emma had stopped crying, her natural childish resilience allowing her to enjoy being the center of positive attention for once. "You knew a mommy like mine?" she asked Daniel. He nodded seriously. "I did. And she was amazing, just like your mom." As we danced, I noticed other couples joining the floor, many stopping to offer quiet words of support as they passed. Patricia Collins, who had been so condescending earlier, approached with her husband to tell me she was horrified by that display and to offer her business card, saying they were hiring in her department. Daniel's father, a distinguished-looking man with the same kind eyes as his son, approached and asked if he could dance with Emma next. "My wife and I raised our boy right," he told me gruffly. "Damn proud of him today." From the corner of my eye, I could see Amanda and my mother in what appeared to be a heated discussion near the exit. My father stood awkwardly between them, clearly attempting to mediate. Several guests were discreetly making their way to the coat check, eager to escape the tension. As the song ended, Daniel returned Emma to me with a gentle smile. "I should probably go deal with the fallout," he said quietly. "But please know that what happened here tonight was wrong, and not everyone shares those views." He hesitated, then added, "Whatever happens next, please remember you have allies." With that, he squeezed my hand once and walked toward his visibly fuming bride, shoulders squared as if preparing for battle. I watched him go, still processing the extraordinary turn of events. Emma tugged at my dress. "Mommy, is Mr. Daniel mad at Aunt Amanda?" I knelt to her level, smoothing her rumpled dress. "I think they need to have a grown-up talk, sweetie. Sometimes adults disagree about important things. Like being nice to people," she asked with the straightforward wisdom of children. "Exactly like that," I replied, hugging her close and wondering what repercussions would follow Daniel's unexpected stand. The remainder of the reception unfolded in a blur of awkward interactions and whispered conversations. After Daniel rejoined Amanda, they disappeared briefly, presumably for the grown-up talk I had mentioned to Emma. When they returned, they maintained a veneer of newlywed happiness, though the tension between them was palpable to anyone paying attention. My mother avoided me entirely, busying herself with other guests as if I had ceased to exist. My father approached once, awkwardly patting my shoulder and mumbling something about your mother being overwhelmed before retreating to the safety of his siblings' table. The contrast between my family's reaction and the unexpected support from strangers was stark and painful. Emma, thankfully, recovered quickly from the ordeal. Daniel's father, Harry, had taken a grandfatherly interest in her, introducing her to the dessert table and helping her construct an impressive ice cream sundae. I watched from a slight distance, giving her space to enjoy herself while I collected my thoughts. "Your daughter is delightful," a voice said beside me. I turned to find an older woman I didn't recognize watching Emma with a fond smile. "I'm Eleanor, Daniel's aunt. I wanted to tell you how sorry I am about what happened earlier." "Thank you," I replied, unsure what else to say. Eleanor sighed heavily. "Family should be a source of strength, not pain. I'm afraid my nephew has discovered his new in-laws aren't quite what he expected." "I don't want to cause problems for them," I said automatically, the peacekeeper role I'd played my entire life asserting itself. Eleanor's gaze was shrewd. "You didn't cause anything, dear. You existed with dignity despite circumstances no one would choose. The problems were created by those who should have supported you." She patted my arm gently. Daniel's mother, Catherine, was my best friend. He wasn't exaggerating about her struggles or strength. She would have adored you and your little girl. Before I could respond, Emma came running back, face smeared with chocolate. "Mommy, Mr. Harry says they're cutting the cake soon." Eleanor smiled warmly at her. "You must be Emma. I'm Daniel's Aunt Eleanor. Would you like to sit with me for the cake cutting?" I saved a seat right up front. Emma looked to me for permission, and I nodded, grateful for this unexpected kindness. As Eleanor led her away, promising a perfect view of the princess cake, I felt a tap on my shoulder. Daniel stood there, looking slightly haggard despite his perfect tuxedo. "Can we talk privately?" "Just for a moment." I followed him to a small alcove off the main ballroom, wary but curious. He ran a hand through his hair, disheveling the carefully styled locks. "First, I want to apologize," he began. "I had no idea Amanda and your mother would do that. If I'd known—" "You couldn't have known," I interrupted. "They've always been experts at maintaining appearances." Daniel sighed heavily. "Still, it was my wedding too. I should have been more aware, especially after meeting you and Emma yesterday. The signs were there." "It's not your responsibility," I assured him, though part of me appreciated his acknowledgement. "When my mother died last year," he continued, "her greatest regret was how her family had treated her after my father's death. Her parents, her siblings, they all acted like her widowhood was somehow contagious, or that she'd failed by not immediately finding another husband." His jaw tightened. "I promised her I'd never let that kind of cruelty stand unchallenged." "Thank you for what you did," I said quietly. "Not many would have risked their wedding day to stand up for a virtual stranger." "You're not a stranger," he replied firmly. "You're Amanda's sister, which makes you family. And, from what I've seen, you're a remarkable mother and woman." An uncomfortable silence fell between us as the implications of his marriage to my sister hung unspoken in the air. "Amanda is not happy with me," he finally said, a masterpiece of understatement. "She feels I embarrassed her. Her perspective is quite different from mine regarding what happened." "I'm not surprised," I replied, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. "Amanda has always been the star of her own show. Anyone who disrupts the performance is the villain." Daniel's expression was troubled. "I'm beginning to see that. I thought I knew her, but tonight has revealed aspects of her character I hadn't witnessed before." He paused, clearly weighing his next words. "Whatever happens between Amanda and me, I want you to know that my offer was genuine. Not about taking you home literally, of course, but about being family. Emma deserves supportive relatives, and so do you." Tears threatened, and I blinked them back. "That's very kind, but I'm not sure Amanda will allow that." "Amanda doesn't dictate all my relationships," he said firmly. "I meant what I said about allies." "Whatever the future holds, you can count me among yours." Our conversation was interrupted by the wedding coordinator announcing it was time for the cake cutting. Daniel gave me an apologetic smile. "Duty calls. Will you and Emma stay for the rest of the reception?" "I'd understand if you wanted to leave." The thought of staying was exhausting, but the alternative of returning to our empty apartment with Emma still excited about the princess party seemed worse. "We'll stay a bit longer. Emma's enjoying the desserts." Daniel nodded, relief evident. "I'm glad. Oh, and I've arranged for a car service to take you home whenever you're ready. Just let the coordinator know." He forestalled my protest with a raised hand. "Please, it's the least I can do." After he left, I found myself approached by several guests offering support. 3 of James's old college friends who had been invited out of courtesy came to reminisce about him and exchange contact information, promising to be in touch about a trust they had started for families of their alumni who had passed away. An hour later, as the reception wound down and Emma's energy began to flag, I decided it was time to leave. I found the coordinator, who immediately arranged for the promised car. As we waited in the lobby, Daniel appeared with a small bag. "Some cake for later," he explained, handing it to Emma, whose tired eyes brightened. "And my card," he added, passing me a business card with his personal number written on the back. "If you ever need anything, call." "I mean that." Emma surprised us both by hugging his legs. "Thank you for dancing with me, Mr. Daniel." He knelt to her level. "It was my pleasure, Miss Emma. You're an excellent dancer." As our car arrived, I turned to offer one last thanks, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I simply nodded, hoping he understood the depth of my gratitude. His answering smile suggested he did. During the ride home, Emma fell asleep clutching her bag of cake. I watched the city lights pass, replaying the evening's events and wondering what consequences would follow. Whatever happened next, something fundamental had shifted. For the first time since James died, I felt like someone had truly seen me, not just the tragic widow or struggling single mother, but the person fighting daily to create a good life from the ruins of my old one. By the time we reached our apartment, a strange sense of peace had settled over me. The humiliation still stung, but it was tempered by the unexpected allies who had emerged from the wreckage of the evening. Perhaps, I thought as I carried my sleeping daughter inside, there was something to be learned from this disaster after all. The weeks following Amanda's wedding passed in a strange limbo. I expected immediate fallout, angry phone calls from my mother or sister, but instead encountered silence. This wasn't the comfortable silence of acceptance, but the loaded quiet before a storm. I focused on Emma and our daily routines, grateful for the temporary reprieve while knowing it couldn't last. 3 weeks after the wedding, the first contact came in the form of a text message from Daniel, just checking in. "Hope you and Emma are well." That simple acknowledgement meant more than I could express, and I found myself smiling as I replied that we were fine, just busy with summer activities. Our exchange continued sporadically over the following weeks. Daniel shared that he and Amanda had postponed their honeymoon to work through some things, a diplomatic phrasing that suggested ongoing tension. He never complained directly about my sister, maintaining respect for their marriage despite everything, but his consistent check-ins spoke volumes about his character. A month after the wedding, I received a surprise invitation to join a support group for single parents at a community center near my workplace. The email came from Eleanor, Daniel's aunt, who mentioned she volunteered there and thought I might benefit from connecting with others in similar situations. With some trepidation, I attended the next meeting. That first evening in the church basement, surrounded by strangers who understood the unique challenges of parenting alone, I finally allowed myself to cry. Not just for the wedding humiliation, but for everything I'd been holding inside since James died. The relief was immense, like putting down a heavy load I'd carried so long I'd forgotten it wasn't part of me. Melanie, the group facilitator and herself a widow raising 3 teenagers, became a mentor and friend. "Family isn't always who you're born to," she told me after hearing my story. "Sometimes it's who sees you at your lowest and offers a hand instead of a critique." Through the group, I connected with other single mothers who became invaluable resources and friends. Sophia, whose husband had abandoned her with infant twins, helped me find affordable childcare that extended to evenings when I worked late. Darius, a widower raising a daughter Emma's age, organized play dates that gave our children companionship and us adults much-needed conversation. Gradually, I began rebuilding my life with this new support network. I found a better paying position through a contact from the group, allowing me to reduce my weekend hours and spend more time with Emma. We moved to a slightly larger apartment in a building where several other group members lived, creating an informal community where childcare was shared and no one was ever truly alone in a crisis. Throughout this period, my biological family remained distant. My father called once, a brief, awkward conversation where he mostly talked about the weather and asked surface-level questions about Emma without addressing the wedding incident. My mother and Amanda maintained their silence, which became almost preferable to the criticism I'd grown accustomed to. 6 months after the wedding, just as I'd adjusted to this new normal, Amanda called. Her voice lacked its usual confidence as she asked if we could meet for coffee. Cautiously, I agreed, arranging to meet at a cafe near my office during my lunch break. She arrived looking immaculate as always, but with subtle signs of strain around her eyes. We exchanged stilted pleasantries before she finally addressed the elephant in the room. "I've been in therapy," she announced, turning her coffee cup in precise quarter turns. Daniel insisted. He said he wouldn't consider children until I addressed my family issues. I remained silent, waiting for her to continue. "My therapist suggested that my treatment of you might stem from competition and insecurity." Each word seemed physically painful for her to pronounce. "She thinks I've been projecting my fears of failure onto you." It wasn't exactly an apology, but from Amanda, this level of self-reflection was unprecedented. "What fears?" I asked, genuinely curious. "You've succeeded at everything you've ever attempted." "That's the point," she replied, finally meeting my eyes. "I've built my identity around being perfect, never failing. When James died and your life fell apart, it terrified me. If it could happen to you, it could happen to me too. So instead of supporting you, I distanced myself, convinced myself you must have done something to deserve it." The insight surprised me. I had always seen Amanda as unshakably confident, never considering she might harbor such deep insecurities. "I'm not saying we'll ever be best friends," she continued, "but Daniel helped me see that my behavior has been problematic. What happened at the wedding was inexcusable. It wasn't the heartfelt apology I might have wished for, but it was honest, and from Amanda, that was significant progress. We parted with tentative plans to have dinner sometime, a small opening that felt momentous after years of growing distance. 2 weeks later, I received a handwritten letter from my mother. Unlike Amanda's clinical self-analysis, my mother's words were emotional and raw. She wrote of her own mother's criticism, how she had internalized impossible standards and then imposed them on her daughters. She acknowledged using Amanda's accomplishments to validate herself while viewing my struggles as personal failures that reflected poorly on her parenting. "I failed you when you needed me most," she wrote. "No mother worthy of the title abandons her child in grief. I can only ask for your forgiveness and the chance to know my granddaughter properly." The letter ended with an invitation to Sunday dinner, a tradition we had abandoned years ago. After much consideration and a long talk with my support group, I accepted. The first dinner was awkward, conversations halting and overladen with politeness, but Emma's natural exuberance bridged many difficult moments. We've continued the dinners, each one slightly easier than the last, healing occurring in small increments rather than dramatic gestures. Daniel has become a steady presence in our lives, sometimes joining these family dinners, other times meeting us for weekend outings with Emma. He navigates the complex dynamics with grace, maintaining his marriage to Amanda while honoring his promise to be an ally to Emma and me. Their relationship has evolved too, tempered by hard truths, but perhaps stronger for facing them. A year after the wedding incident, I can look back with perspective I lacked in the moment. The public humiliation, painful as it was, became a catalyst for change I might never have initiated otherwise. It forced confrontations long overdue and revealed support I never knew existed. Most importantly, it showed me my own strength, forged through grief and hardship, but never truly acknowledged until tested so publicly. I've learned that family comes in many forms. Sometimes it's the people who share your DNA, bound by history and obligation. Other times it's the friends who appear when you're at your lowest, offering practical help instead of judgment. The truest family I've discovered are those who see your whole self, flaws and struggles included, and choose to stand beside you anyway. My worth was never determined by my marital status, bank account, or address. It exists independently of others' opinions or society's narrow definitions of success. In teaching Emma this truth, I've finally absorbed it myself, breaking cycles of judgment and comparison that preceded me by generations. Today, my life looks nothing like I imagined when James and I planned our future, but it holds joy, connection, and purpose I once thought lost forever. Emma thrives, surrounded by an extended family of people who genuinely care for her well-being. My relationship with Amanda and my parents remains a work in progress, with setbacks and breakthroughs occurring in equal measure. Daniel continues to be the unexpected bridge between worlds I thought forever disconnected. What would you do if the people meant to love you most became your greatest critics? How would you find the courage to stand for yourself when it seems the whole world has turned away? Each of us faces moments that reveal who truly stands with us and who merely stands near us. It's what we build from those revelations that defines our future. If my story resonates with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear they're not alone. Hit subscribe if you want more stories of resilience and unexpected allies. Leave a comment about a time someone surprised you with support when you needed it most. Remember that your worth isn't defined by others' limitations, and sometimes the most important family is the one you create for yourself. Thank you for listening to my journey, and may you find the strength to write your own story of triumph, whatever challenges you face.